There's a moment you've probably lived before. You're going about your day, maybe folding laundry, maybe scrolling without really seeing, when suddenly a memory of someone sweeps in like an uninvited guest. Their laugh, their eyes, something they once said, and you wonder, are they thinking about you too? Or is this one-sided, a ghost you keep carrying while they've long since moved on? That question, it's heavier than it seems, because underneath it is another one. Do I matter? Not just in the easy ways, like birthdays or late-night texts, but in the quiet corners of someone's mind when no one else is looking. And here's the thing, most people will never tell you outright. They'll never hand you a clean answer. But there are signs, unexpected, random little actions that whisper more truth than the words they carefully choose. Carl Jung once suggested that what lies beneath the unconscious always leaks out, not in grand gestures, but in slips, habits, patterns. That's why sometimes when someone thinks about you, they don't confess it, they reveal it. Maybe in a stutter when your name comes up. Maybe in the way they hold a silence just a beat too long. Maybe in something as simple as a late message that has no real reason to exist except you were on their mind. And here's what I want to say to you. If you've ever questioned whether you're unforgettable, if you've ever felt erased, you are not alone. Millions carry this ache, quietly wondering if love leaves any trace after it's gone. This is for you, because you deserve to know the hidden ways someone's thoughts of you show up in the real world. You deserve to feel seen, to realize that you are not just an afterthought, you are someone's echo. Before we dive deeper, let me pause and ask if you've ever found yourself searching for these hidden signals. Take a breath and stay with me. And if you feel something stir inside while you listen, don't keep it to yourself. Share this with someone who might need it too. And if you'd like to be part of a space where we uncover truths that most people leave unsaid, subscribe and stay close. Because this is not just a video, it's a conversation. It's a place where hearts meet without masks. Sometimes, the first sign that he's thinking about you doesn't look like anything special. It might be the way he suddenly reacts to something small, something only you would understand. You post a quote at midnight, and an hour later, he likes it. Not right away, not when it's fresh in the feed, but later, after scrolling past dozens of others. Why? Because he went to your profile. He was thinking about you and needed to feel close in some quiet, safe way. He won't say it. He probably won't even realize he's doing it. But something stirred inside him. A longing, a question, a what if. And that's the paradox, isn't it? Sometimes, when someone misses you, they don't reach out. They watch from afar. They test the air for your scent in old places. They chase a version of you they only admit to missing when the lights are off and the world stops demanding so much of them. Maybe he passed the place you used to go, that coffee shop where you always got the wrong drink but pretended it was fine. Maybe he drove by it and didn't mean to remember, but there it was, your laugh in the steam of the glass. And now, without warning, your name lingers in his mind. There are people who forget, who pack memories into boxes and leave them on the side of the road. But there are others, people like him, who carry the weight differently. They tuck you into playlists, into passwords, into scribbled notes at the bottom of notebooks. You live in the background noise of their thoughts, like a hum that never fully disappears. So when he does that random thing, likes a post from months ago, texts a joke only you would get, or suddenly mentions a dream where you appeared out of nowhere, it's not random at all. It's his subconscious saying, she still lives here. And he doesn't know how to say it out loud. Not yet, and maybe he never will. But if you've ever wondered if you crossed his mind today, you probably did. Not because you tried to be unforgettable, but because real connection leaves echoes. Not noise, echoes. And echoes return when it's quiet enough. Breathe. Let that sink in for a second. You don't have to chase a heart to be held inside it. Sometimes they're holding you quietly without knowing how to carry you out loud. And sometimes he shows it when he dreams about you. Not just in sleep, but in the way he speaks about the future. The way he says someday, then pauses. The way he talks about a city he wants to visit, one you once said you loved. These aren't accidents. They're emotional fingerprints. His body remembers, even when his pride tries to forget. So, if you've been asking the universe for a sign that you mattered, maybe this is it, and maybe it always was. There's another moment, a quieter one, that reveals even more. He hears a song. one that never mattered before. But now, it undoes him, not because it's beautiful, not because of the lyrics, but because once, on a late-night drive or an early morning walk, you sang it softly under your breath, and in that moment, something ordinary became sacred. Now, every time it plays, he goes still. Maybe he's surrounded by people. Maybe he's alone. Doesn't matter. That song doesn't just play anymore. It visits. It brings you with it. And he doesn't know whether to skip it or let it ruin him for 4 minutes and 27 seconds. So he listens, quietly, still, like someone trying not to scare away a memory. If you're wondering whether he feels your absence, he does, but he hides it in these tiny rituals. Playing your song, taking the long route home, checking your stories but never liking them. These are the modern prayers of a man who still cares but doesn't know how to come back. And when you feel him tugging at your spirit, when you sense a ripple in your chest with no reason, trust that instinct. You're not imagining it. Souls don't forget each other. They recognize, they return, even in silence. Do you want to know something strange? When men think about someone they once loved, it doesn't always come as a flood. Sometimes it comes as a single image, your hand brushing your hair away. The way your eyes squinted when you laughed too hard. That one hoodie you used to steal. It's not logical. It's emotional muscle memory. And it always comes back when they least expect it. Here's the most hidden sign of all. He picks up a habit you once loved about him. The cologne you liked. The books you told him to read. The walks in the evening that he swore he'd never enjoy. But now he does. Not for the world. Not even for himself. For the version of him that existed when you were near. He is, in his own quiet rebellion, trying to become someone who could be worthy of you again, even if he never says it. Even if he never shows up at your door. That's the wild part about memory. It builds homes in people. And sometimes, they start decorating them again, hoping you might come back. So if you've been catching flickers of him, wondering why your chest feels heavy at midnight, why the wind sounds like a whisper you once loved, know this: he hasn't let go. Not really. And deep down, some part of him is still building a room for you in his mind. Just in case. There's a kind of heartbreak that doesn't explode, it just lingers. And he carries it like that, quietly, carefully, like something breakable still wrapped in tissue paper at the back of a drawer he opens when no one's watching. Because here's the truth, no one wants to admit. Not all men move on. Not completely. Sometimes the strongest sign he's thinking about you is when he disappears, not out of cruelty, but because you still matter too much. Because staying in touch would unravel him. And instead of telling you that, he vanishes, hoping distance will dilute what he can't control. But it doesn't, because distance doesn't erase connection. It just makes it ache differently. You'll know it in the strangest moments. You'll feel it when he messages you out of nowhere, just to ask something trivial like the name of that Thai place you once dragged him to, even though he didn't like spicy food. He doesn't care about the name. He's just hoping you'll answer. Hoping your name will light up his phone again, even if only for a second. Or maybe he shows up in someone else's story. A comment, a tagged photo, and there's something in his eyes. A tiredness, a question, a part of him that looks like it's still waiting for something that never fully arrived. You see, when a man truly felt you, your soul, your depth, your chaos and softness, he can't replace that. He can date someone else. He can laugh, flirt, even fall again, but your imprint stays. Because connection isn't a switch, it's an imprint. And you left fingerprints on the parts of him he didn't even know existed until you touched them. That's why sometimes he'll mimic the energy you gave him. You'll hear him say phrases he once made fun of you for. You'll notice he started wearing rings or listening to that indie band you loved. Not because he's copying, but because your essence became part of his rhythm. It's involuntary, like breathing. And yes, maybe he hurt you. Maybe he left. Maybe he failed to choose you when it mattered. But don't confuse that with forgetting. Some people leave and still look back every single day. He might not send flowers. He might not write long apologies. But if he suddenly starts bettering himself, showing up differently, finally facing the shadows he used to run from, he's thinking of you because you were the mirror he avoided and the muse he didn't know how to protect. And now, in his quiet moments, he realizes the truth. You didn't just love him. You saw him, and that's rarer than anything else. There's a certain look in someone's eyes when they remember you mid-sentence. It's subtle, like a flicker, a pause, a shadow crossing their face when someone mentions your name, even in passing. That's when the mask slips, just for a breath. He might recover quickly, smile, change the subject, but something cracked open, and if you were watching closely, you'd see it. The grief of someone who remembers love like a place they once lived in, but lost the key to. Because you weren't just another chapter, you were a turning point, a soul detour. The moment he started seeing the world in a different light, even if he tried to act like it was nothing. And sometimes, the most obvious sign he's still thinking about you is the way he reacts when people bring you up. Not with anger, not with bitterness, but with stillness. Like he's trying to hold something together. Like your name is a memory he can't risk unfolding. Let me tell you this. The way he loved you might not have been perfect. Maybe it was clumsy, afraid, unfinished. Maybe it left you with more questions than peace. But if he's out there now, revisiting the parts of himself he used to avoid, if he's changing not to impress the world, but in that slow, lonely kind of way people do when no one's watching, you're in the silence between his new sentences. The reason he double-checks himself before he makes the same mistake. The invisible thread between who he was and who he's trying to become. And when he's alone, truly alone, he wonders if you ever knew that. He wonders if you felt it when he didn't say it. If you caught the meaning behind the things he couldn't say. If maybe, just maybe, there's a version of this life where he gets to hold your hand again and say the words he buried too deep. Here's the secret. Some men don't realize what they had until it's gone. But some knew it the whole time. And just didn't know how to hold it without breaking it. And now, when he finds himself wide awake at 2 a.m., looking through old photos, scrolling through moments he thought he'd forgotten, it hits him. You weren't just someone he dated. You were the voice in his silence, the softness in his storm, the memory that won't let go, no matter how many times he tries to silence it. So if you're still wondering if he's thinking about you, he is, but not always in words. Sometimes, in the way he softens, when no one is around. Sometimes in the way he stares a little longer at the sky, wishing it could carry his apology. And sometimes, in the way he still dreams of you, even with someone else lying beside him. There's something no one tells you about real connection. It doesn't expire. It doesn't dissolve because months have passed, or because he's found someone new, or because you've stopped talking. Time might wrap it in layers. Pride might bury it deep, but when something was real, soul real, it stays. Even when it's silent, and it shows up in the strangest ways. He starts writing again. Not because he wants to publish anything, not because anyone's reading, but because you once told him his words mattered, because you were the first to see the softness under all that noise. And now, when the world gets too loud, he goes back to that part of himself you uncovered. Or maybe he starts spending more time alone. Less chasing, less distractions, more walks, more moments where he lets the ache surface instead of burying it. That's what you did. You opened him, and opening is a kind of breaking, but also a kind of becoming. You taught him presence. You taught him that love isn't about impressing. It's about being, sitting in silence and still being chosen. That's what haunts him now. Because he remembers the way you stayed, the way you asked him how his heart was doing when everyone else only asked about his job. Now, when someone touches his arm or laughs too hard at his jokes, he flinches not visibly, just inside, because he's searching for something more than chemistry. He's searching for the depth he once had and didn't know how to protect. You were the depth, and he thinks about that more than he lets on, especially when something good happens. A win at work, a funny moment in a movie, a trip he finally saved up for. He wants to tell you. The reflex is still there. The muscle memory of turning to share joy with the one who saw him when he didn't have any. But he doesn't reach out. He just smiles softly to himself, maybe closes his eyes, and whispers a name he promised himself he wouldn't say anymore. Yours. You see, when a man truly loved you, he doesn't erase you. He just learns to carry you in quieter ways. And sometimes he reaches out, just a little. A reaction. A saw this and thought of you. Not bold enough to crack the silence, but enough to say, I'm still here. Are you? And maybe you won't respond. Maybe you'll smile and let it be. Or maybe your heart will start racing, confused by the sudden reopening of a chapter you swore you closed. Whatever you do, just know this. That moment, that message, that random reach, it's not random at all. It's proof. You are still written into the parts of him he thought no one else would ever read. There's a place in his life that still wears your name. Not out loud, not in a way anyone else would notice, but in the most human way possible, through his patterns, through his stillness, through the things he no longer does, because they don't feel the same without you. Like how he doesn't watch that show anymore. The one you used to binge together in your hoodies and half-eaten takeout nights. He tried, maybe once or twice, pressed play, hoping it would feel like home, but it didn't. It just felt like absence, or how he changed his coffee order. Because yours always came with something sweet, and now even sugar tastes like a memory. That's how grief shows up, you know. Not just in tears, but in skipped songs, avoided places, a look that lasts too long at a pair of shoes in the back of his closet. He might not even tell his friends. Maybe they think he's fine. Maybe they say things like, "You'll find someone better," or "It wasn't meant to be." And maybe he nods. Maybe he even believes it for a day or two, but then you show up. Not in person. In reminder, in the way someone laughs at a joke you would have rolled your eyes at. In the smell of cinnamon at a cafe that somehow still carries the echo of that cold afternoon. You held his hand too tightly, and suddenly he's not fine. Not really, because you weren't forgettable. You were a chapter he never wanted to finish. A sentence he keeps rewriting in the margins of every new story he tries to live. And here's the part he'll never say out loud. He wonders if you think of him too, if your chest tightens when a song comes on, if you ever scroll back just to see his name again, if maybe, just maybe, you still remember that one night where the world felt quiet, and you whispered something you thought would last forever. He replays that night more often than you'd imagine, not for the drama, not for the closure, but because that night was the last time he felt fully known, and nothing has felt quite as real since. So if he starts showing up differently, slowly, like he's testing the door again, if he reacts to a post, or sends a message, or even just lingers in your orbit like a ghost trying to remember how to be alive, it's because the weight of not speaking has grown heavier than the fear of being rejected. And when a man starts thinking with his heart more than his logic, you feel it, like warmth returning to a room you forgot was cold. Like a heartbeat in the silence, there's a moment right before sleep takes him when the world is the quietest. No notifications, no distractions, no one to impress. And that's when you show up the loudest, not because he calls for you, but because the part of him that loved you was never performative. It was raw, unpolished, and it doesn't need noise to survive. It just is. In that moment, in the dark, he remembers the smallest things. The way you'd pull the blanket over your shoulders in your sleep. The way your voice dipped when you were scared, but still trying to be brave. The way you'd say his name not like a word, but like a home. He remembers, and it stings. Because there was a time he could turn and see you lying there, breathing softly, trusting him with your rest. And now there's a void, a silence that doesn't get filled, no matter how many new voices try. You were not just someone who loved him, you were someone who understood him, and that's why he thinks about you when he feels most misunderstood. Maybe he's in a room full of people, laughing, performing, being everything everyone expects. But suddenly a wave crashes inside, and all he wants is to be back with the one person who didn't need him to wear a mask. You, who saw his mess and stayed anyway. You, who looked at his darkness and didn't flinch. That kind of acceptance doesn't fade. It haunts. It heals, it hollows and fills, all at once. So if you feel your heart tug at random times, if a part of you wonders why, months or even years later, your chest still tightens at the thought of him, it's because you're still connected. No matter how far apart you drift, energy doesn't lie. And when someone thinks of you with the kind of depth that broke past logic, that defied timing, that scarred and saved them in the same breath, you feel it. That flutter in your stomach that makes no sense, that tear that slips without a trigger, that sigh that sounds too much like surrender. It's not madness, it's memory, it's resonance. Because even now, even after all this time, he's still holding pieces of you. Not because he can't let go, but because some things are not meant to be released. Some things become part of who we are. And you You are one of those things for him. There's a strange kind of truth in the way he avoids talking about you. He doesn't bring your name into conversations. He dodges questions. He shrugs off memories like they don't ache. But it's not because you don't matter. It's because you do. Too much. And speaking about you would make it real. Would unravel the parts he's worked so hard to keep stitched together. Because the moment he says your name out loud, he risks shattering the fragile silence that's been keeping him afloat. So instead, he rewrites the story. Not because he wants to forget, but because he doesn't know how to remember without pain. He tells himself, maybe it wasn't the right time. Maybe we were just young. Maybe she's better off now. He lies to himself gently. Not to erase you, but to survive the weight of missing you. But then, a scent catches him off guard, vanilla, or lavender, or something warm he never liked until you made it feel like home. And it unravels him, all the logic, all the pretending, all the casual indifference, gone, because memory doesn't care about timing. It doesn't ask for permission, it just arrives. And when it does, it hits in the middle of a grocery store, or in traffic, or when he's staring out a window at nothing in particular. It arrives in full color, and it asks nothing except to be felt. So he lets it. For a moment, he lets the memory of your hand in his calm him. He lets the echo of your laugh fill the silence. He lets the image of you soft, honest, real linger in his chest like something sacred. And then he breathes, not because he's okay, but because that breath carries you. Still, always. That's the part people don't understand about real love. It doesn't always lead to reunion. Sometimes it just leads to reverence. He might never knock on your door again. He might never say the words you always deserved. But when he chooses kindness over ego, when he apologizes instead of shutting down, when he shows up for someone fully instead of halfway, that's you. You, teaching him from a distance. You, changing him without even being there. And when the world asks him who helped him grow, he may not speak your name, but his soul remembers. It always remembers. There are moments now when he catches himself smiling for no reason. Not the kind of smile you show to be polite, but the kind that slips out when a memory brushes past, soft as a ghost. You, standing barefoot in the kitchen, dancing to a song only you could hear. You, sitting cross-legged on the floor, rambling about something you loved, eyes lit up like the stars had settled behind them. You, quiet, looking at him like you already knew everything, his flaws, his fears, his unspoken hopes, and you stayed anyway. He smiles because you were real. And for a time, so was the love. Not perfect, but pure. And now he measures everything else against that. He meets someone new, and they're lovely, kind, funny, the kind of person he should be able to fall for. And maybe he tries. Maybe he leans in, opens up, gives it a chance. But somewhere between the laughter and the late-night talks, there's a pause, a moment he can't explain. Because as beautiful as she is, she doesn't look at him like you did. She doesn't ask the hard questions, doesn't challenge the parts of him he's still trying to outgrow, doesn't make silence feel holy the way you did. And he hates himself for comparing. But how do you unlearn love that deep? You don't. You just carry it. You fold it into the corners of your heart and hope it doesn't bleed too loud. You tell yourself that what you had was once in a lifetime, but not meant to last. You thank the stars for the memory, and you really try to keep moving forward. But sometimes, when it's quiet, he still talks to you, not out loud, not in ways anyone else would notice, but in that sacred space between thoughts and dreams. He tells you he's sorry for the way he pulled away, for the walls he built, for not knowing how to be loved the way you offered it. He tells you he still remembers your birthday, that he still carries your favorite poem in his notes app, even though he pretends not to read it anymore. That there's still a shoebox in the back of his closet, photos, movie tickets, a handwritten note from you tucked away like a treasure too painful to look at, too precious to throw away. And when he hears someone mention soulmates, he doesn't speak. He just looks down, because he's not sure he believes in that anymore. Or maybe he does, but he's lived it and let it go. Sometimes, he wonders what you'd think of him now, not in the shallow ways, his job, his routine, the way he finally learned to eat breakfast before noon, but in the ways that matter. Would you be proud of the way he's learning to sit with his emotions instead of burying them? Would you notice that he's more patient now, more present, more willing to listen without trying to fix everything? He hopes so, because a lot of that change began with you. You weren't just a part of his past, you were a mirror. And sometimes the hardest part of healing is realizing the person who helped you see yourself isn't the one who gets to stay. So he sits with that quietly, and when people say just move on, he nods. But he knows that moving on doesn't always mean forgetting. Sometimes it means integrating, carrying someone forward in a different way. Not in your arms, but in your being. That's what you became for him, part of his being. There's still a softness in his voice when he speaks to people who remind him of you. Still a tenderness in the way he handles fragile things. Still a reverence in the way he pauses before speaking, like he's remembering how you once asked him to listen more deeply. He thinks about the way your absence taught him presence, how the quiet that followed you became the space where he met himself. And even now, when he feels joy, true joy, he wishes he could share it with you. Not to prove anything, just to say, look, I'm becoming the man you always saw in me. But maybe you already know, maybe part of you feels it in your chest on random days, at random hours, like a warmth rising from nowhere, because energy doesn't die. And what you poured into him didn't vanish, it's blooming, even if you never get to see the garden. And yes, he still thinks about you. When the sky turns that golden blue you loved, when a stranger says your name and he has to pretend it didn't stop his heart, when he hears a laugh that sounds almost like yours and it knocks the air out of him, you are stitched into his silence, etched into his growth, written into the softest parts of him, not because he couldn't let go, but because some love doesn't end. It just changes shape and becomes the whisper that carries us forward, even when we walk alone.